from Ielts, and this is making money choices during COVID-19. Glad you could make it. All participants are on mute, or that's the idea, is for the participants to be on mute. We will be recording. Kit, if you're hearing me and you want to get, you will be able to send that to people if you request it. We will have the PowerPoint available as well. If you do wish to ask any questions, there's a chat box, so please put your questions in there. We'll see how time goes. We wanted to try to keep this to an hour or as close to that as possible. And of course, we've got a lot of great information to share, so we may or may not be able to get to a lot of questions. If we don't, you know, we can answer questions after tonight, as I know our panelists will have their contact information and be available as well. Okay, let me. All right, so again, my name is Patricia Burhow. I'm a financial coach here at Ielts and a housing counselor. Joining me from Ielts staff tonight is my colleague Elena Hung-Shum, who may just chime in a little bit, but Elena also does housing counseling and financial coaching at Ielts. And Kit Patel is also with us. He'll be doing some of the presentation later on. He mostly does financial coaching, although we've been kind of dragging him into the housing counseling. Just briefly, Ielts is a nonprofit organization. Our headquarters is in Trenton. We've been there almost 40 years. Ielts does a lot of things, and I would strongly encourage and invite you to please check our website to learn all about that. We are an environmental and community development organization. One of the things I'll just give a shout out to is our colleagues who do a lot of great work in healthy homes. They can come and do assessments of people's homes and possibly make repairs on health issues, asthma, mold, etc. So again, check our website or contact us and we will put you in touch with those folks after tonight. So Ielts Financial Solutions is the part of Ielts that is bringing you this presentation tonight, and that we are work as part. We do personal finance services for moderate, low income, actually consumers from all range, frankly, on everyday budget financial issues, budgeting, credit, debt, savings, home ownership issues. So please contact us. Again, you have our information here, and reach out to us. We can do one-on-one appointments at the moment. We're doing that all remotely, but we can sit down together with you. And especially after tonight, if you want to sit down together and put together a budget, you know, plan for your bills, etc., we can really help you with those things. There's no charge at this point in time for those services, and we are now available to the general public. Sometimes that changes, but right now that's the way we're doing that. So what are we going to be doing? Our agenda for the evening. I'm going to start us off with a bit of an overview about our thinking about how to make these money choices that we're talking about. And then we're going to, with the assistance of Dan Rubin, who has very kindly Central Legal Central Jersey Legal Services. I see that's not written correctly. Sorry about that. And so Dan will be going there, kind of talking about, well, in kind of a, you know, poor scenario, worst case scenario, what happens if you don't pay? You know, from a consumer perspective, if you don't pay certain bills, what kind of things can and cannot happen? And also on a housing front, he'll be addressing that. So, you know, not every bit of that is going to apply to everybody, but it's a lot of good information for sure. We'll also have Cynthia Mendez joining us from Arm in Arm, one of our local partners in Trenton. And Cynthia is just going to give us a very brief overview of the kind of assistance you can get from a place like Arm in Arm. There are others throughout the state, but we wanted to get straight from someone representing one of those organizations a bit more information about how people can access assistance if you're eligible for that. And then Kit is going to talk to us about can increase your income things of that nature. And as I said, we'll see, hopefully have some time for some questions. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my clock here so I don't go too over. All right, so first things first. As we said, since we're talking about COVID, and this is what we're really trying to do here is talk about what happens when you're in a situation where your income is reduced. Maybe you've got two earners in the house and one, and you're really trying to figure out how to get by in that kind of a circumstance, and that's what we're focusing on here tonight. So first off, you really do have to do, there's no substitute for it, you got to do that assessment. What's going on, what's coming in, and what's going out each month on a monthly basis. And essentially what you're trying to do is figure out, like, what does it really cost to run your life? And this assessment we're talking about now, I don't usually like to get too particular with people where, you have to write things down and this, that, and the other. But with this, I am a little particular because I do think you need to write it down. There's really no substitute. You can do it on old-fashioned pen and paper, or you can use, an Excel spreadsheet. We have worksheets like that you can use in Excel. Again, we can send that to you afterward if you're interested. But really, we need to see what's going on. So in order to be able to do that, you can look at your debit card statements, if that's the way you pay for things, your bank account, that will help. But what do we want to list in this when we're doing this assessment? Well, obviously your bills, what are the usual suspects? People who are getting your money pretty much every month, right? Or at least they're asking for it. Regular expenses as well. So here we're talking about things like groceries, gas. You're not going to get through a month without, some of these kinds of things, for the most part. Irregular expenses. Now, in this kind of a situation, this is a little bit difficult, not difficult, but different, I should say. In a typical budget, what I would say is to think about, throughout the year, what are the things that don't happen every month, but they still happen and they're kind of significant when they do. Like maybe if you celebrate the holidays and, have summer camp for your kids, what have you. Think about those things and save a little bit each month for it. But if you're in a situation of reduced income, it's really more a case of trying to think of the ones that will really be and then of course your income. Don't forget when you're doing this, things like auto pays, small subscriptions. If you have something like a storage locker that's on auto pay, make sure you're including all of that stuff. What we're trying to do is we want to come up with what we would call a budget. And by doing an assessment where you start to list things, you'll that most people find doing this and getting a number to reduce the stress, because then it's not just some vague sense of, oh God, this isn't working, I don't have enough, I'm trying to pay this one, I'm trying to pay that one. It's really more of, okay, can I make cuts? Can I find a way to find another $500? And that seems a little bit more something you can actually take an action to affect. So that's the way we find most people experience that. Because essentially what this comes down to, and this is heightened in this kind of a situation when you have reduced income, but this is always the truth. There's like a competition going on for your money every month. And as far as I'm concerned, all things that get some of your money, they need to earn that spot in your budget. They need to beat out the other things, okay? Why is this getting your money and that not getting your money? And especially when there's not quite enough to cover everything, there needs to be like everything that's getting your money better have a good reason, better have a strong case for getting some of your money. It's kind of the way I think about it. So how does a bill or an expense make the cut? Well, first thing, is it essential? Is it a need? I don't usually get involved with this with people because I am not the person who's going to tell you that getting your hair dyed or whatever is not a need. Frankly, that's up to you. But more so, it's kind of up to math. So you'll see if there's room for it, there's room for it. But if there's not, these are really the things that most often we think of as being essential items. There may be more, but certainly these things are on most people's list of the essentials, right? Somehow we've got to cover food. We've got to cover our health. These are the top priorities. Shelter, and by that I'm including utilities, things like that. Essential communication, having a phone, some sort of a way. I mean, if you're out of work and looking for a job, yeah, you need a phone. That's not just, frivolous. Transportation, again, maybe it's the car you have now, or maybe it's public transportation, but some form of transportation is probably necessary. Responsibility toward others, here we would include things like child support, possibly life insurance, if that's something that you have and would need to be maintaining. Oh, sorry, how did it go backwards? Oh no, okay. All right, there we go. All right, so in this competition for your money, as I said, we just listed out some of the things, but it's not as simple as that. This is the problem I find with a lot of things you see about budgeting, where it's all like, well, it's needs and it's wants. It's not as simple as that, because you've got to be thinking in a bigger way. It's not just about what do I need, what do I want? It's also like, well, what's the fallout if I don't pay for that? And that's not always just about needs and wants. So if you don't pay for that item, what might happen if you don't pay for that item or that service? In other words, are they going to shut you down immediately? When are they going to shut you down if they shut you down? Are you going to be able to pay it later? Things like this. What if you don't have that service or that item anymore? Is that a real problem for you? How much does this thing matter? Cell phone service, utilities, etc. Are there ways where you could maybe get that thing cheaper? Is there some assistance that might be available to help pay for that thing? Would paying a partial payment help? Sometimes things like credit card, people want to make, feel like, well, at least I sent them something. If you didn't send at least the minimum, as far as they're concerned, they didn't get anything. And that's going to go on your credit, those kinds of things. So I'm not saying credit, as we'll talk about later, that is a lower priority. You'll see it was not on that essentials list. But it is something, as you're thinking through all of these issues in making your decisions, it's something to consider. And what I said there actually segs us perfectly into this, which is this idea of making decisions, making a plan, not just putting out fires. It's very easy when we're falling behind with things, usually you're feeling badly about that. Of course, we all want to be able to pay our bills and stay on top of our situation. But if you're not able to do so, sometimes it's, the collection person who called, or, the bill that showed up with the biggest red thing on the front, that, all right, I just got paid and they just asked me for money, so I'm going to send them some. I want to see people make decisions and make a plan where they are going to choose going to win out in this company, what's going to get some of my money, and you're going to choose that based on the kind of things that I was just talking about, and some of the things we're going to be learning about from Dan and others. That's going to go into your decision, not who's screaming the loudest or any of those kinds of things. And again, back to what I said earlier, making decisions, just like having a number in mind, that actually feels better. Even if you wind up making decisions, what I like to see? I want to say, here's the stack of bills I have decided not to pay right now. And these are the ones that I will pay. Sometimes that's what you have to do. And it actually feels better than just kind of vaguely knowing it's not working out. So as I said here, you want to make decisions with the totality of your situation in mind, not just the one that you're thinking of that moment, thinking of them all, who wins that competition. And you want to consider the possible consequences, that fallout that we mentioned in doing so. So just to recap that, is this item or this service I'm thinking about essential? Can I get it for less or satisfy it differently? Can I put off making the payment? What would the consequences be if I don't pay it or delay paying it, right? There's, those could be financial, emotional, legal. And is that going to happen right away, or is that going to happen a little further down the road? Again, this is all things to think about with your thinking. The last thing I want to leave you with in my little part here is, when you're dealing with a situation of reduced income and not having enough really to stay on top of things, okay, it's a lousy situation. It just is. And, oftentimes we get caught up, all of us, in all kinds of things, not just financial, kind of looking for the good option. Like, there's got to be one out there. There's got to be a way I could do this. I could do this. And it gets sort of overwhelming. And because we don't like any of the options, we just don't pick any of them and just don't do anything. And the reality is, a lousy situation probably has mostly lousy options, not great ones. So the issue isn't, do I pick this option? Even the question is, which is the least lousy option, given the lousy options of my lousy situation? Okay. I think when we think of it that way, recognize what we're in at the moment, it helps us, again, to make those decisions as best we can in a situation and not do nothing a perfect out there. All right, that is my bit. So as I hope you are going to somehow turn this over to Dan Rubin. As I said, Dan is a senior staff attorney with Central Jersey Legal Services. And he is going to, as I said, he's going to go there, right to it. What happens if I don't pay a bill? Because this is a lot of the information that it's not that easy to come by, and we want to hear it from someone like Dan, who can really give us the answer on these things. That's right, not just what you Google. So Dan, I think you're set. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. I think I need to move the slides along for you. So if you just tell me, I will do that. Okay.
That would be great. All right, I'm trying to turn on my video, but I'm not able to. It says the host has stopped it, but I will just get started. So just briefly about I'm Dan Rubin from Central Jersey Legal Services. We are a nonprofit legal aid organization in Trenton. We serve anyone from Mercer County. And just so you're all aware, in the areas of housing, that some of which I'm going to be talking about, we currently have some grants that have raised our income limits. So if you think you might not be eligible for legal aid, you may be now due to the pandemic. I would encourage you to give us a call. And I'm going to, in the chat box, for those of you who can see that, I'm putting in our name, phone number, and my email address. You can contact me directly. I will get you to who you need to talk to if it's not me. So what I wanted to talk about is consumer and housing issues during COVID-19, focusing on what is different during COVID-19, because particularly in the area of housing and somewhat in consumer, things are a lot different than they were before this all started. But Patricia, you could go to the next slide if you could. All right, so first I'm going to touch on consumer collections, judgments, bankruptcy, student loans. I'm going to be throwing a whole lot of information at you here. And again, I would encourage you to contact our office. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we can actually get back to you on those. Try to get right now. Patricia was just talking about, prioritizing bills. So what happens if you can't pay one? I'm going to be focusing on consumer bills. And at the beginning here, where that's talking about credit cards, medical bills, unsecured personal loans, bills for services of things that you've purchased. There's different rules for stuff like taxes and child support. We're not talking about that right now. During the pandemic, companies we've found more willing than they were before to work with people. They're offering deferments and repayment plans that we weren't usually seeing. So we'd first off encourage you to try to work with the company. If you're going to try to do a repayment plan, they might be significantly, that's usually more than about 6 or 7 months, you may receive calls or letters from a debt collector. A debt collector is a company hired to collect the bill. It's not your original creditor, but they may be calling you to try to get collections. Most accounts, especially credit cards, they do something called a charge-off where they sell it to a debt buyer. This is a different company is now contacting you through a debt collector. However, that company is now the owner of your account. It may be Tricia, next, if you could. All right, so sometimes people wonder if they fall behind a bill, can the debt collector or the creditor just take your wages or your bank or money out of your bank? The answer generally for this type of debt, credit cards, medical bills, unsecured loans, the answer is no. The debt collector has to get a judgment in civil court and enter that judgment before they can levy on your bank account or take your wages. They cannot just take them because you fall behind. You have to get a summons and complaint. You have to be sued. They have to get a judgment. You have to have a chance to respond. They cannot take anything from you until they do that. There's an exception for debts like taxes, student loans, child support, or if you owe money to a state or federal agency. Those debts, they may have the ability to offset certain benefits, tax refunds, and other types of income if you owe those. So bear that in mind. But for your run-of-the-mill credit card, medical bill, and other consumer debt, they cannot just take money from you. And note that a debt collector for a credit card, medical bill, or things like that, if they call you and they say they're going to do that, or they threaten you with jail, or they threaten to or actually contact your employer or family member, ask you to pay more that you legally owe, or call you between 8 p.m. and 9 a.m. your time, they're violating federal law. And there's actually a lot of attorneys who will take these cases and sue the collectors who are doing this. So it's important to know your rights here. If you feel you're being harassed, you feel free to contact our office and get advice about that. But know that you do not have to put up with that. Next slide, please. All right, if you are sued, so if they do file a suit against you in civil court, what happens? Well, courts are open now. Cases are being scheduled remotely by Zoom, just like this. At the moment, there's no in-person court dates. We don't know when they're going to start up again. You'll get in the mail a complaint that says you're being sued and what you're being sued for, and you'll have 35 days to respond to the complaint. That's not a court date, okay? If you do get this in the mail, it has a deadline on it. That's not your court date. Do not go to court. You do have an opportunity to respond. If you think it's wrong, you don't owe it, the amount is wrong, you can respond. You can also file your answer electronically. I put a link here, and that's on the court's website. Note, however, if you are sued, and this is for most types of collection cases like credit cards and medical bills and things like that, if you don't file an answer, if you don't respond, there's no court date. And the plaintiff who is suing you wins automatically by default. A lot of people don't understand that. They think they're going to have their day in court if they get sued. But in this type of court, where it's less than $15,000 and it's not small claims, and this is where all the credit card companies like to file their cases, if you don't answer, they win automatically. So keep that in mind and be vigilant if you do want to respond to that. If you need help with that, please contact our office. Next slide, please. All right, so if they do get this judgment, either because you didn't answer, you don't dispute it, or you did answer and the court enters it in whatever amount, the most common types of collection in New Jersey are wage garnishments and bank levies. Now your wages, there's a limit on what they can take. So they can only take money from you if you earn more than $217.50 gross a week, and only up to 10% of your gross income total. If you earn less than that, even if they put a wage garnishment order out there, they're not going to get anything. If you are unemployed and they send one to your former employer, they're not going to get anything. If you have two judgments and one is already garnishing your wages, the second one is not going to get anything. It's one at a time. They can also levy money that's in your bank account, and there's not a limit on that. However, if you earn federal benefits like Social Security, SSI, federal pension, or any other protected federal benefit, the bank will actually bounce the levy right off if that's the only thing in your account. That's a relatively recent change. As long as the only money in your account is a federal benefit that comes in electronically, which is how most of them do, your account will not be levied. In addition, anybody can claim up to $1,000, no matter the source, in your bank account as exempt. You can also claim as exempt any child support, unemployment, TANF, or general assistance as exempt. They can't take that for a collection judgment in this type of case. Now, you have to file a claim, and our office can help you do that, but that income is protected, just so you're aware of that when you're trying to figure out, the priority of what you have to pay here. Next slide, please. Okay, so credit reporting. A lot of people are concerned about how this stuff is going to show up on your credit reports. So first of all, the credit reporting companies only report information that's given to them by your creditors. A lot of creditors don't send anything in. Most landlords don't report your regular monthly payments. Most medical bills don't either, and a lot of utilities don't report. So not everything is going to be on there. In addition, credit reports, and this was due to widespread inaccuracies, they actually stopped including civil judgments. So if a creditor gets a judgment against you, your missed payments from your account might be there, but the judgment will not. They don't report those anymore. And it's a good idea to check your credit report to make sure everything is up to date and accurate. And during the pandemic, all three major bureaus are giving you a free report every week. I gave you the website here. It's annualcreditreport.com. You do not need to pay any fee. You can check your report for free every week. And you can report incorrect and inaccurate information. You can remove it from your report by submitting a formal dispute. Now, that's only incorrect or inaccurate information gets taken off. If it's correct, even if it's bad, you can't get rid of it. And you should certainly not pay anyone who is offering to give you credit repair and take off things that are accurate. It's a scam. Most of these places are not permitted under New Jersey and federal law, and you should avoid them. And they're going to take your money, and they're not going to do anything. You should go to an approved nonprofit credit counseling agency like Ielts to take care of this. There's also, if you get a forbearance under the CARES Act for any of your accounts, they're not reporting those as delinquent. That was an update. If you get if you have a COVID-related issue and you get a forbearance for that, that's not going to get reported right now. Next slide. Okay, bankruptcy. The bankruptcy courts are open. Bankruptcy it's complicated. I'm only going to touch on it very briefly, but it immediately would stop any collection efforts. So if you're subject to a wage garnishment, a bank levy, or a foreclosure, and you need it stopped right away, bankruptcy will put a halt to everything on the day you file. There's two main types. A Chapter 7 is a common one if you want to discharge your credit card, medical bills, and other consumer debts that I've listed here. It gets rid of your bills, and note that it does not get rid of fines, most student loans, if you have income taxes, or if you owe any child support, those do not generally get discharged. Also, if you have a mortgage or a car loan or a tax lien on your house, the bankruptcy will stop any pending action on that, but it does not get rid of your obligation to pay that. So you cannot file a Chapter 7 and get rid of your mortgage, all right? Or, everyone would do that. That is not included. If you need to get caught up to date on a mortgage or a tax lien or a car loan, you can use a Chapter 13 bankruptcy to make a payment plan to catch up. Now, if you have a car that you don't want anymore, or you want to turn in and you're concerned about money that's going to still be owed on your loan, you would want to do a Chapter 7 for that. If it's been repossessed or it's going to be repossessed. If you want to catch up on your payments and keep the car, you're looking at a Chapter 13. All right, next slide. Okay, student loans. So during, because of the pandemic, Congress passed a law that was recently extended that payments on most federal loans, student loans, are suspended through December 31st of 2020. And Social Security can actually normally be taken to pay student loans if you're in default. However, that is also suspended for most federal loans through the end of December. In addition, New Jersey made a deal with a good number of private student loan servicers that you can request a 3-month forbearance due to the pandemic. And under most of these programs, they are not going to charge late fees or negative credit report during your forbearance period. Next slide. Okay, so let's get into housing issues. So we'll start with tenancy. Next slide. This situation has changed really very dramatically due to the pandemic. So you may have heard, or you're probably aware, that there's currently a statewide moratorium on evictions. It's currently going through December 1st. People are expecting it might get extended further. And what that means is two things. Number one, the landlord-tenant court is not holding eviction trials and not entering judgments. Your landlord, if you fall behind on your rent, they can file a complaint in eviction, but they're not going to get a court date. Instead, they're having these voluntary settlement conferences to try to work out payment plans. But if that doesn't happen or doesn't work out, you're just going to wait until the court scheduled trial, which the courts are telling us is not going to be happening until early next year at the earliest. And you cannot be locked out by your landlord if he's waiting for a trial and not getting one. The only exception is this is for not payment of rent. If your landlord is trying to evict you for property damage or some other reason, they may still be able to have a trial. Those are relatively unusual. Next slide. And another part of the pandemic relief was the governor allowed tenants to use their security deposit towards any past due rent. All you have to do is write to your landlord and say that you're using the security deposit and what months of rent you want to apply it for. And under this order, it's applied. Okay, but important note here, this is temporary. You're going to have to repay that security deposit the next time you renew your lease or at the end of this relief period. So in the future, that's going to have to be repaid. But as of for right now, you can use that security deposit for rent. Normally, you can't just do that, but you can because of the pandemic right now. Next slide. All right, so the CDC also has an eviction moratorium. This is nationwide. It was in the news recently. This requires you to sign a declaration about why you can't pay the rent. And it also only applies if to non-payment of rent cases. If it's for a reason like damage or something else like that, it can still go forward. Rent is still due and late fees and other penalties can be applied. This is not quite as broad as New Jersey's moratorium. For example, in New Jersey, if you're in a motel and you have nowhere else to live, you are covered under the moratorium. That's not the case for the federal rule. So right now, you're best covered under New Jersey's, which goes through December 1st. Likely is going to go through the end of the year. We have to keep an eye on that. Next slide. All right, if repairs to the property are necessary, the landlord does still need to repair it, even if you are not able to pay your rent. You can still write to your landlord, tell them what's wrong. Their duty to keep the property in working order has not in any way changed. They still have to do it. Unfortunately, they can't, there's no trials, which means you can't go to court to complain about these issues. Just like they can't go to court for evictions. You can raise it during one of the voluntary settlement conferences, but you have to first notify your landlord of the problem in writing. Since there's no court, you can try contacting the city or municipal housing inspector, or if you're in a subsidized property, the state agency that handles your property to see if they can have it fixed. It is possible to file your own habitability complaint in court. That's really the only way to get it into court. If you needed advice on that, it's a bit complicated. I would say to contact our office. Next slide. Okay, so it's important to note that while landlords right now cannot lock you out, if for not paying your rent. They are not allowed to remove you, to change your locks. They're not allowed to turn off your utilities or otherwise inhibit you from living there. They cannot do that. However, none of these programs that I've mentioned would get rid of the rent. The rent is going to come due when all of these eviction moratorium ultimately end. And there's not really any plan as to how they're expecting people to pay that. There may be some rent relief in the federal stimulus bill, but it's not likely that they're going to pay everybody in the whole country's rent since March. So if at all possible, you have to continue to try to pay the rent, or as much of it as you can. Try to work out a deal now before before it's too late and everyone's looking for a deal and it's going to be total chaos. There are state and local programs that might be able to provide you some help. One of them locally is Arm in Arm, with Cynthia Mendez is going to be speaking about soon after me. So there is help out there and it may be available now, but do it now and don't wait. Next slide. Okay, mortgages, very briefly. If you need help with your mortgage due to the pandemic, it's a pretty simple process right now to get a 90-day forbearance due to COVID-19. If you have a federally backed mortgage, which is backed by the FHA, HUD, the VA, the USDA, you may be able to get a longer forbearance that could go up to a year. And that moratorium request period was extended through December of 2020. So you have to contact your servicer and request this forbearance. And if you need, advice or help, Ielts provides assistance. Our office provides assistance on that. But ask for help before things get too far behind, because help is available. Even servicers that are not federally related, that have nothing to do with, the FHA, they are offering forbearances right now. We've actually helped people get them. If you do fall behind on the mortgage, the lender can go to court with a foreclosure complaint, and foreclosure cases are going forward right now. However, there's no sheriff sales, and the lockout moratorium also applies to foreclosures. You cannot be removed from your house, just like if you were a tenant. There are no lockouts happening right now. But again, I would contact an agency like Ielts, a nonprofit housing counselor, to learn more about your options if you are struggling at this point. Next slide. Okay, this is our information. I put it in the chat box. I would encourage you to contact our office, and I thank Ielts for having me give this information.
Hi, I am Kit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what can happen if you don't pay. Dan discussed a lot of the things that are, the legalities of it. However, I want to kind of talk about what's, the consequences. Okay, if you can't pay, you're going to have lower credit scores. You're going to see charge-offs, collections. Now, collections stay on the credit report for 7 years. You may have to pay premiums for utilities and insurance. Now, these days, whenever you try to apply for a utility, such as PSE&G or even your cable provider, they run a credit check. And if you have a low credit score, they may require you to put up a deposit that you would receive a year later after you make on-time payments. These are the consequences if you're just not able to pay. But sometimes you're pushed into a corner and there is just no good option. We just need to know the consequences and what to expect. However, you can always rebuild. When your situation improves, just paying on time and settling past debts will help increase your credit score over time. Now I'm going to pass it over to Cynthia.
Yes. Oh, hang on one second. I was just gonna chime in here. Thanks, Kit. And Kit will be back again. We just had him talk a little bit here about the credit, because we know that is something that's so much on people's mind. We've been hearing about it, in recent years. It's like, oh, you got to worry about your credit. Yes, you do. There are, things that credit matters for. But again, bear in mind, if you've already been late on some things and your credit's already not great, it's not going to get a whole lot worse, you know, given what's happening at the moment. So that's one thing to bear in mind. And as kids said, it can and will. That's the one thing I like about credit, is that it's not permanent. No matter what happens, so no, even if it does go south on you, you can and will improve it. We can help you with that. It's a combination of getting, you know, letting some time pass and dealing with the old, but also starting to show new habits again where you're back paying things. So don't lose heart when it comes to credit, and we can work with you on that one-on-one. All right, as you said, we are on to Cynthia. Let me.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Mendez. I'm the Director of Housing Stability Services for Arm & Arm, which is a nonprofit agency in Trenton, New Jersey, downtown Trenton. I oversee the homelessness prevention side of the agency. We have food pantries, which I'll talk about briefly in a bit. We have a License to Succeed program, a representative payee program, workforce development. Those are our 4 major areas. But tonight I'm here to talk about homelessness prevention, back rent assistance, security deposits, mortgage assistance, and utility assistance. And as Dan said, rent is due. You still have to pay it. So there are agencies throughout New Jersey, similar to Arm & Arm, not Arm & Arm, but other agencies that may have some monies that can assist you with back rent. One good resource is NJ211, .com. You can put that in your computer, phone, and look up housing assistance, and you need to designate what county you want to look at or what city you want to look at, and they will give you a list of agencies that provide that service within. You even get to do a mile radius, so it's up to you. But there are agencies out there who are willing to help, and in Trenton there are several besides us, including Homefront, Catholic Charities, Village Resources, and even the City of Trenton has funds. But I'm here to talk about Arm & Arm. So we are doing all of our services remotely now, which means that you have to call in and speak to a case manager. You may not speak at that particular time to someone, but within 24 hours, you will receive a call back from one of my case managers, and they'll do a pre-screening. So right now we're looking at, what created the hardship? Most people, it's COVID-19. Did you lose your employment? Was there a loss of income? Are you able, or are you collecting unemployment? So those are the major questions. We are looking at assistance for people primarily. The hardship started approximately April 1st going forward. We also look at how much money you owe. And if we are to assist, then we want to know that with our assistance that you are close to being whole, meaning you don't owe any more back rent, you're current on your rent, or there's a reasonable payment plan that you've set up with your landlord. So if in Mercer County, we only serve Mercer County clients. In Mercer County, like Dan said, they are doing mediation meetings. And if you go into that meeting and you have set up a payment plan with your landlord, please give us a call. And at the end of the slide presentation, there's a phone number, but the phone number is 609-396-9355, extension 11. So we will do this pre-screening to determine if we are able to do a complete intake. And if we are, then we'll tell you at the end of the phone call if we're, moving forward with the intake, and we will send you an email with all the documentation that you need to submit to us. So documentation will include a current rent ledger or that eviction notice if you have it, because we need to see what you owe. We need to see your sources of income and the loss of that income. So we may ask for a pay stub before April 1st, but then we want to see what you have coming into the household currently. So we would need to see that. We would need a photo ID on all adults in the household, birth certificates for children in the household, Social Security cards for everyone in the household. But let me say this, not having a Social Security card does not exclude you from our services. So please give us a call. And we do have Spanish-speaking staff available for people whose primary language is Spanish. So for background, we would need to see a lease or current recertification through HUD recertification. For mortgage, we would need to see a default letter or foreclosure notice. And once we get that information in, you'll email it back to us or fax it back to us. We would then call you back to do an intake. An intake over the phone takes about 45 minutes. And we're going to ask you a variety of questions. We're putting this information into our database. At the end of that conversation, then there's a decision that will be made and a promissory note will be issued. The promissory note is made out to your landlord, but it will be your responsibility to get that promissory note to the landlord for them to sign, and you have to sign it. It has to be returned to us. If there's any outstanding documents that we still need, we will not make payment until we receive those documents. So, like I said, the promissory note is made out to the landlord, and the check is issued to the landlord. We do not put any monies into clients' hands. Mortgage it's not a promissory note. With the default notice, we may talk to your mortgage holder, and a check is sent directly to your mortgage holder. For utilities, we like to see a shut-off notice. And we pay gas, electric, and water bills. We do not pay cable and telephone bills. So, but if you have a PSE&G bill, JCP&L, Maritime Water, Trenton Water Works, and there's a shut-off notice, please give us a call, and we'll see what we can do to help you. Like I said, and like Dan said, you know, if you have that payment plan set up, please give us a call. And it's easier now to do it. For some reason, we're slow right now. So we are open Monday through Thursday from 9 to 3, and we can assist. And again, it's done remotely. The other service I briefly want to touch upon is our Pantry Services. We have 3 pantries located throughout Mercer County, 2 in Trenton at our main office, which is 123 East Hanover Street, 46 or 48 Hudson Street, and 61 on Nassau Street in Princeton. You do need to pre-register with us, and again, call the number 609-396-9355, extension 11, and they will register you. Our Hanover Street Pantry is open Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 9:30 to 1-ish. Our Hudson, same hours, but on Mondays and Wednesdays. And Princeton is open Monday through Thursday, primarily in the afternoons from about 1:30 to 3:30. You will need to show ID, but you do not have to sign. It's a grab and go type of thing. It's pre-packed bags at this point. But we will give you enough food for your family to hold you for about 2 or 3 days. And that's really about it. So please give us a call if you are in need of background assistance, security deposits. If you want to move for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, there has to be a threat of homelessness, or you have to be homeless, or a habitability issue. But give us a call and we can talk through that. The same requirements though for income. We do look at income. We do look at sustainability, if it's affordable going forward. You know, if you are making $1,000 a month and you come to us and you want to rent an apartment, or your rent is $900 a month, that's not sustainable. So we will say no. But we will talk you through that. And that's really about it. Again, my name is Cynthia. Thank you, Ielts, for inviting me to participate. I have to say, Ielts is a fantastic organization. And on a personal note, I will say I went through their first-time home buyers program a few years ago. It was extremely helpful, and I am now a homeowner. And I, in part, thank Ielts for educating me on the process. So thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. Congratulations there, Cynthia.
you.
And always nice to get that vote of confidence. We certainly appreciate it. And we do appreciate everything you and your colleagues do at Arm in Arm, such a great organization and so helpful. Before we lose you, do we still have you? If I wanted to ask you a question, just a couple of
Yes,
things.
ma'am.
Okay, just I know sometimes one of the things, and I was doing some of the tech things here, so I don't know if I missed it. What about in terms of an income cap? I mean, if somebody, for example, wants to apply for the mortgage assistance, I mean, how does that work?
So we look at 250% of the federal poverty level based on household size.
Okay.
And honestly, I don't have those numbers in front of me. So I can't specifically say what it is,
Right.
but it's pretty high.
Yeah.
And that's for backroom security deposit and mortgage assistance.
Right.
For utilities, we look at 300% of the federal poverty level based on household size.
Right. Okay.
So that's one of the first things we will monthly income, and we'll let you know immediately if you qualify income-wise.
Right. Okay, great. And just, I'm not actually aware of how this is working these days, because I know normally, as you say, you guys are looking to have a shut-off notice for the utility assistance. So even though people won't be shut off in the current situation, as my understanding is, but are they still getting a notice if they're behind on their PSEG?
I believe they are getting a notice.
Shows it? Okay.
Right, I believe they are.
Okay.
And so we'll say on their shut-off notice.
Right.
You know, LAHEAP is getting ready to reopen October 15th. So that's another
for the, for the
a
electric.
source of another community resource that people can utilize.
Right, great. All right then, Cynthia, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Your information is up there, and people could contact us, and we can certainly send them over your way. So we appreciate that. Thanks so much. And now I think we are on to Kit, right?
Yep.
Back to you, Kit, to kind of bring us home here. And yep.
Okay. So what I want to focus a little bit on is talking about a penny saved is a penny earned, because with limited resources, many of us in the last few months have started to reevaluate our priorities, our savings, and our savings plan. I do this constantly, like the song, my money is on my mind is on my money. Everyone is different. We understand that. Our situations are all unique. Therefore, some of our tips will apply and some will not. However, these are the universal questions we all should ask ourselves. Can I get this for less? Can I get food for less? Yes, you can. You can get store brands, sales, look for sales, coupons, a dented can here and there, buy in bulk. Homemade, making food at home, eating out less. One thing COVID has done, it has accelerated, at least for me, making food at home. I've definitely been eating out less, going to less restaurants like many of us, and we've probably started to see that savings in our savings and spending plan. As Cynthia mentioned, if you're really struggling, you can get some free food from these pantries, local farmers market. You can even apply for SNAP and WIC. Let me just emphasize the NJ211.org. This is a service that is a nice screening tool all around, a resource, a one-stop shop, shopping where you can find resources and services available to New Jersey residents. You can even talk to a live person. Next slide. Can I get health care for less? Now, no fault of your own. If you lost your job, of course, you can apply for Obamacare. You can go to healthcare.gov, find a plan that fits your needs. Before you do that, though, I would recommend talking to your primary doctor and see, use him as a resource to see what is the best plan for you, because I'm sure there are multiple options out there. If you are employed, there's really not much you can do about your healthcare expense other than trying to get good deals on prescriptions, maybe through like apps like GoodRx, and using the FSH program, the healthcare savings program. Next slide. Can you get housing for less? I mean, Dan and Cynthia both talked about this. If you're struggling right now, talk to your landlord, talk to the lender. If you're not sure, you can even talk to a housing counselor. I would recommend talking to a housing counselor first before even talking to your landlord and lender, so we can help you create a plan on how to approach that conversation. You can get assistance, as they mentioned, from Arm in Arm, Catholic Charities, Homefront. If you already own your home and you might be struggling to make the mortgage payment, maybe it is time to sell or downsize. That is also a conversation you can have with one of us at Ielts, where we can help you create that savings and spending plan to help you determine if that's the appropriate option for you. You could move in with relatives, friends, or get a roommate. I know a colleague right now, she's renting out a room in her house, and she is getting help to pay down the mortgage. These days, if you are employed, interest rates are really low. So downsizing could be an option. To do a refinance could be an option. Now, these are things that you can talk to us about, and we can point you in the right direction. Next slide. Can you get utilities for less? Now, this is a really tricky one. You can contact the service provider, and if you're behind, as Cynthia said, to work out a payment arrangement, but eventually you would have to pay whatever is due at the end. However, you can, with your you could switch energy suppliers. That's for your electricity. Now, electricity is charged by the kilowatt. Now, it may not seem like a big savings, but it does add up. Every penny you save is a penny earned, and if you can save $10 or $15 just by switching energy suppliers, I would definitely do that. Now, you could go to nj.gov, NJ Power Switch. There are a list of providers there where you can contact, and once you speak with someone, they will ask you for your PSEG account number, or your whoever supplying your energy, the account number, and they will help you determine the best possible rate, what your rate is and what they're about and what they can do for you. So they'll help you determine what savings you can receive.
Kit, I'm going to interrupt because I talked to Kit about this recently. We were having this conversation. This is kind of a new thing. A lot of people hadn't been doing it, but long story short, my bill is going down probably about $600 more than that over the year because of a switch to a different supplier. So do your research, learn about it. It might be something to do. That's it, I'm done.
Give them a call. There's not much you can do about the gas, unfortunately, but for the electricity, definitely, there are options available out there. Next slide. Communication. Can you get communication for less? Absolutely. Everyone I talk to always overspends in this one category. Whether they have Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, there is always a cheaper service provider available. It might not be the most ideal, but if you're in a lousy situation where you need to reduce expenses, it is something that you have to do. You can also sign up for Autopay. Autopay could save anywhere from $5 to $10 a month just on your bill. Now, if that's an option for you, I would definitely look into it. I would call the service provider and see if that is an option and if there is a savings for that. I did not know that for my service provider. I have T-Mobile, and they said if I sign up for Autopay, I can save almost like $10 a month. I was like, why wasn't I doing this before? I didn't know. I had to call to find out. Just I would recommend calling every provider and seeing what they can do for you. They have options available for people. Maybe they could reduce bills, especially with cable. I would recommend cutting cable if that's even a possibility for you. Cut the cord, go to just basic internet, and go on a subscription diet of Netflix and YouTube or Disney Plus, whatever it is. You will save literally 50% off whatever you're paying in cable just by doing that. There is Comcast Essential. Now, if you have a child at home who is receiving a meal plan assistance, you may qualify for basic essential internet from Comcast. You should look further into it. You can call Comcast and see if they are your service provider, see if that is an option available to you. Next slide. Can you get transportation for less? Absolutely. My car loan, I just recently refinanced it. I've had it for 5 years, and probably 2 years into it, I probably had like a 4% rate to start with. And I called the credit union, and they gave me like a 2.5% rate. It saved me maybe like $30 a month, but it adds up. My payment is less, $30 less. It's something that you can do. Every dollar counts. You can switch insurance carriers. I also did this as well. I looked into it. I was with NJM. I thought they were really great. And for some people, they are really great. But for some reason, my bill was a little high, and I contacted AAA, Travelers Insurance, and I was able to save $1,000 just by reducing increasing my deductible and reducing a couple of things that I just didn't need. I was overprotected. Now, if you're in a situation where you are really struggling, basic auto insurance could be available to you. Special auto insurance policies. You could actually go to the state website to look more into that to see if that is an option that is for you. I really don't recommend the basic auto insurance policy, because if you were to get into some kind of fender bender or just an accident, God forbid, they have the right to sue you, and it really doesn't provide a lot of coverage for you. But in the state of New Jersey, you are by law required to have auto insurance, so it is something that you need to have. Do not go without it. Have something. The special auto insurance policy is really for people who have Medicare with hospitalization. That really doesn't apply to a lot of people, maybe people over 65 and up. You could use ways to find, you could use apps, technology to find like good gas prices. I mean, I personally think there are pretty good gas prices right around the corner because there's so many gas stations in New Jersey, but you could definitely do that. If you have a Costco membership, you could go to Costco and, get the cheapest gas available to you. And that also helps you save money, spend money less on food with that membership because, they have really good deals buying in bulk and stuff like that. So It's killing two birds with one stone, I guess, right? Next slide. Now, options for credit card debt. If you have a lot of debt, which is unsecured credit card debt or just personal loans, what do you do? Obviously, if you're in a situation right now where it's just you're not able to pay, there's nothing you really can do other than reach out to the creditor, let them know what your situation is. Maybe they can set up some kind of arrangement with you. Right now, this is the best time to reach out to these creditors because they are very accommodating. They understand the situation. You could, if you have some income coming in and you just want to reduce that burden, that interest rate, you could put them into a debt management plan where they consolidate all those credit cards and maybe sometimes even a personal loan into one monthly payment and get you out of debt within 4.5 years at a rate around 9 to 10% on average. They do work, and it does save you a lot of money in minimum payments. Now, if you have collection accounts and you have some money from maybe your stimulus or unemployment, and you're in a good position and you're in a position where you could kind of take care of some of this debt with this extra money that you have on the side, I would call these collection agencies and try to settle your debt. They will take pennies on the dollar in this situation. I had a customer who had a $10,000 debt. He had some money he got from the stimulus. He set up a payment arrangement with the collection agency, and he was able to settle that debt for 4 payments of $1,000, for $4,000. That is unbelievable. I was shocked because that just happened. It just went into collection. It just proves that there are, they are also desperate to get some, to make some deals to collect some money. Next slide. Oh, no, wait 1 second. New loans. If you're in a bad situation, I would definitely recommend not getting a new loan. Don't apply. Right now, they will give you the money if you have good credit. I would definitely recommend not taking any new loans if you do not need it. If you want to do a consolidation, do a debt management plan. You can contact one of us and we can walk you through it. I wouldn't recommend taking retirement loans unless you absolutely need to tap into your retirement, because due to COVID, there are they are allowing some loans that were not allowed before to happen to help people avoid foreclosure or evictions. Also, bankruptcy is always an option. Dan discussed that with you. If you have a house, if you have some assets, you'd be doing like a Chapter 13. If you don't really have any of that and you just have debt on your name, you could do a Chapter 7, wipe it clean, and start over and start to rebuild that credit again. Next slide. Get more money. Everybody wants more money. I'm always waking up, how do I make more money? Part-time job. These days, it's difficult. A lot of people unemployed, but with the gig economy, which is Uber, Instant Cart, Lyft, those are ways to make a few bucks. It's a few bucks. It could be a few $100s if you were to do it part-time on a weekly basis. It does add up. It could definitely help. You could change your tax withholdings. You might be at work right now at this job for the last like 5 to 6 years, and when you started, you had your tax withholdings at maybe 4 or no 0, and now you have 2 kids. So you can change your dependents to 2, and you can get more money back every paycheck. But unfortunately, if that happens, you're going to get maybe less of a refund at the end of the year. It could also end up owing a lot of money. If you don't really need it, I don't recommend you change your withholdings. Reducing your retirement contributions, I also don't recommend that, because that's tax-free. So that reduces your tax liability, and you definitely don't want to do that unless you absolutely have to. You can get contributions from grown children. I mean, if they're in a bad situation, obviously that's not going to be possible. Sell stuff. I sell stuff all the time on Facebook, things I don't even want. I put it on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. Before I know it, someone's at my door ready to pick it up for a few bucks. In review, what does it cost to run your life? That's a question that you need to keep thinking about. How do you decrease expenses, increase income as possible? Making decisions, knowing, creating a plan with consequences in mind. And you have to be flexible to change, because our situation is constantly changing. Acknowledge what you can control and what you cannot. Thank you.
Thanks, Kit. All right, well, we apologize for being a little bit over time. Not too bad here, but we had a lot of good information and our great guest speakers, which we thank again to share. We will be able to, as I said, we have a recording that will be available. If you do not receive an email from us about the recording, or if you have questions, which we didn't have time for, of course, please do email us or call us. Our information is right here. You can take a picture of that if you don't have a screenshot, and you know how to reach us through the IELTS website as well. Thank you so much again to our guest speakers, Dan and Cynthia, and to all of you for being with us tonight and participating. We look forward to working with you individually on your situations. Please get in touch. Thanks, Kit. Thanks, Elena. And good night, everybody.